welcome back. We're doing another security tech talk. Tonight, we're going to talk about the cannabis industry. Um, so we have some special guests with us tonight, and they have both been in the cannabis industry for a while. And I wanted them to share that experience, talk about how it's been, how's it going, and just shed some light on that new industry. I know it's very recent. The laws have changed that allowed this to really grow, and there's a lot of growth in that sector, and it makes a lot of demands on the security professional. So we always talk security on these, and this is something that I wanted to make sure that we talked about and maybe educate and enlighten a few people on what's going on in that industry and how it's making a change. I'll introduce myself first. Mick, I'm with Trican Security. We're working out of Maryland. Frankie, go ahead.
My name is Frankie Salyer out of Arizona, Southern Arizona, with Cicada Systems.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Day from Better Days Technology, based here in Bristol, Rhode Island.
You left out the middle name.
My government name.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to keep it lighthearted, but I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you and get your feedback on. And I guess one of the big ones is, how did you get into this industry? Jeff, we're going to start with you because you're on my right.
All right. Well, first, Mick, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. So I think, how did I get into the cannabis security industry? Are you aiming for how did I fall into it, or how did it naturally happen, I guess? I guess maybe I can answer both. I had a main job. I was a director of technology for a private school out here in Rhode Island. And I was running Better Days nights and weekends, just kind of hustling, trying to do that for the last 20 years. Kind of always thought it could be this full-time gig. And during the pandemic, I was getting ready to go off on my own right before the pandemic. And then I was like, man, I better chill on that because the world is kind of a crazy place right now. I want to have that steady job. Little did I know that was really the time to go off on my own. Technology really was the glue that held the world together at that time. I went off on my own shortly thereafter, and but I tell this story a lot. I know, Mick, I've told you. I met a guy who was starting a cannabis empire over here, and at one of a school function, him and I were just there with our wives, and the girls went off dancing, and we were just kind of sitting there in the corner, just miserable. And he's like, "Hey, man, I'm doing this whole cannabis thing," and I was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever, man. Cool, good for you." And he's like, "No, I'm serious. When you're ready to go off on your own, I'm really going to need a technology specialist." And he when I went off on my own, he's like, "Hey, man, why didn't you call me?" I'm like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "No, I'm serious. It's go time, man. I got this, I got that. I need a guy." And it really stemmed from there. It was a night that I refer to all the time as the night that really kind of changed the trajectory of my company. And I've just rolled with him ever since. We've spun up a bunch of stores, a bunch of growing facilities, and I'm certainly learning a lot about the industry as I go. There really wasn't a manual for this. You kind of it's new to everybody, like you said, and I've been really blessed to have a business that I'm working with that just has tremendous growth, and I'm there every step of the way. Built up a lot of trust with them, and now I'm just his guy for everything. And it's really great to have that rapport because, like you said, securing these buildings is no joke. So you really want to have someone you could trust. It's funny because now I've kind of become like this local cannabis security guy. And, I've gone off and I've looked at a few other places, and I'm kind of like the go-to guy now in the area for securing some of these places. And I know we're going to talk about it later, but there is a difference between people who are serious about securing these places and are ready to actually, back the Brinks truck up and spend some money securing these places. And then there are other, it's just, it's like any other industry, you got the people who are serious about it and want to keep their place secure and want to spend the money to do so. And then you have the tire kickers, just like you have at any mom and pop restaurant who want cameras and then want you to install Best Buy stuff. It's like, I am realizing now that I've kind of branched off into other companies is that it's just like anything else. There are people who are cheap and don't really see the severity of security and surveillance. And then there's the gentleman that I work with who security and surveillance is paramount. And, that's the pond I want to be swimming in for sure.
How about you, Frankie?
Oh, well, I got to follow up with him. Absolutely. Some people do want to spend it. Some only care about the plants themselves, and they'll have lawn chairs throughout the whole building. They don't care. But,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely different clients, and the biggest one we did is it's got to be the best one, and that I kind of got into just off a phone call. A buddy that knew me from the substations and whatnot, just working around other people I know. One of my friends and my dad as well, and he said, "Hey, there's a warehouse, and they want some cameras," and that's how it started. I got to talk to him. He's a real professional guy, but he's like, "Oh, I want the cameras. I want the network. I want the CO2 life safety. I want the growing hardware and software, and you got to tie it into the HVAC, and then the dehumidifiers." It just kept going, and I was like, "All right, if I got my basic principles, we should be able to pull this off." And it all ties together, and I like that environment because most of them are professionals. Once it gets to a higher scale, you don't have to really know everything. You're like, all right, I know how to communicate with this person, and they're a specialist in that. So it's easier for me because if you can
Yeah.
talk to the IT department instead of you have to figure out all the IT, it just gets a little messy right there. But as far as I kind of skipped over getting into this stuff, it was my dad invited me to drive him around doing security. We were talking about that, and he just anything that he had going on, he's like, we could do that. We're in a small town, so you kind of had to figure it out. So we're able to just come up and do whatever. So when we got into security, it wasn't like we knew everything about low voltage or whatnot, but just figuring stuff out and messing around and work for a company that if that phone rang, yeah, we do that. And we were gone, and I was doing stuff I probably shouldn't have been doing and figuring out and saw cutting loops and stuff. It was crazy, man. It was a good start, but kind of got off track there for a second.
No, never off track, man. I agree 100%. It kind of, trust is everything in this industry. I'm beginning to realize. And, I think it's one of those things. I mean, I follow you closely, Frankie, and it's like, I feel like you definitely do a lot more than I do on the growing side of the play of the industry. The last build out that we did, I remember being there one day, and I was like, damn, I'm like Frankie today. They're asking me to do the irrigation system, and I'm like, I'm the Wi-Fi guy. I don't know a thing about irrigation, but I mean, honestly, watching your account really kind of gave me that confidence that I needed to
Beautiful.
be like, hey, it's wires, man. I mean, I don't necessarily need to know everything about the irrigation system to know that I can at least do the cabling for it. And
Yeah.
I personally want to thank you. I know I've thanked you a bunch of times, but man, like, your account is amazing. And the way you work your stories every day, it changes a lot of people's confidence, including mine. I can say that firsthand,
That's cool, man. And I like doing that because it's like I'm not prepared. And if I show the beginning, now I'm obligated to you guys to figure it out,
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't think I was going to pull that off, And sometimes, excuse me, sometimes the stories will stop because I didn't figure it out or everything went to hell. And I was like, what just happened there? And I'm going to another city and, starting and stopping it. But there's like a responsibility I feel when I start there. I know it sounds like philosophical, but
Nah, man, it's real.
because I've noticed, and I saw your guys' conversation first, and I was just like, I told Bear I was geeking out. I was like, just commenting too much in your guys' chat, and I was like, all right, I need to back off. But we're all like lone rangers, man. So it's like a hero's journey. You go into something, and then you cross into the unknown, and you got to figure it out in the middle of chaos. And when you return, now you're the master of security and your own personal world. So it's kind of cool. And when I seen you guys do the same thing, I don't know, I think I'm the only one who knows how to do this because I'm constantly alone.
Yeah.
Working with a crew, but it's crazy watching that.
Well, and I mean, you kind of touched on something like this industry is so new that we are kind of all lone rangers in it. It's not like you're reaching out to like the Pierce of the industry that's like, got 20 years of security and surveillance on a cannabis, growing facility, like we're all kind of blazing our own paths here. And it's really cool to see what other folks are doing like yourself. And, like I said, I'm just learning so much as I go here. But it's cool. It's not like securing any other industry, like I said, the irony in all of this is I've spent the first half of my career in education. So, and that included security and surveillance of education facilities. So to migrate over to a cannabis, and the way our company is structured is we have a MSP side for our schools, our school clients, and then we have this humongous cannabis client that's just as big as all of our schools combined. And the joke at Better Days is never make an appointment on the same day when you go to visit a growing facility and then go to a school, because you don't want them to think you smell. My wife can always tell where I was that day. She's like, you stink. But it's I will say, there are a lot of similarities that gave me the confidence to be ready to take on the responsibility of securing a cannabis, whether it's a retail store or a growing facility. Working in private education, we had a lot of high profile students at the school, and being part of or being the director of technology, I was personally responsible for our security and surveillance systems. So it had a lot of similarities when I was going out the gate there that I could really at least lean on when I was migrating over to this industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, you can't find anybody who's got 20 years experience in cannabis because we haven't had 20 years of cannabis.
Yeah.
And not to mention, the industry is state specific. So every time you cross into a new state, well, it's a new set of rules, a new set of regulations. And you're talking about crossing into the unknown. You cross a state line and start doing it somewhere else. That's exactly what it's called, the unknown.
Right. And unlike Frankie, Frankie's in Arizona, and all 6 New England states could fit inside Arizona, and all 6 New England states are like being in 6 different countries for that matter. I know that, I know you have questions for later on, so I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but that to me is the hardest part and that's the hardest part really in running a tech company in New England in general is, each state is so small, but yet they all have their own set of rules for cannabis, and then for low voltage, for alarms, for everything. And that to me has been the biggest challenge. Is and I know we're going to get to that, so I'm sorry, Mick, if I stole your
No, it's all right.
your outline there.
Let's get back to the questions.
Ah.
All right, let's go. So, what advice would you have given yourself if you had the chance to go back and talk to you before you got into cannabis?
I'm going to let you go first, Frankie.
All right, Frankie.
Oh, man,
you gave it. He passed it.
Banking off of you, man. Just be prepared. Like it's almost the intensity of fire alarm. Like they have a deadline, and it's gonna, unlike other projects, move. It's not going to move away. It's going to move forward. You just have to be prepared, because the last facility, they were already growing in one spot, and those plants started, and they need to go in the building because that one's getting demoed. And the pressure, you just have to be able to just be prepared, and just be prepared. You have to have confidence and all that anyway, but just have all the groundwork for that to start. But that was the main thing, because the day everything was signed off, they literally, it was like the end of the day, let's say 5-6 o'clock. The plants came that day. They didn't wait for tomorrow. They were just like, boom. And they were coming in, and I was just like, they were literally just waiting on me 100%. And one of the big things, as far as like project management and all that, having things be held up, it doesn't have to be intentional, but the ceiling was going in. We still haven't got our cables for certain add-ons and things like that. That slowed everything down. So we're tripping over our feet trying to catch momentum again. But, yeah, just sitting down, making sure you're part of the planning process and in that Gantt chart, because that was the biggest thing that I regretted from that I should have been there on.
All right, Jeff. Now you cheated. You can give your answer.
No, I would say I'm very fortunate that I almost get to relive my experience at every location, if that makes any sense. The cannabis outfit that I work for spins up a new store almost every 6 weeks. We just finished one a couple days ago, and I'm already taking physical notes on what I want to do differently for next time. So I get to tell myself what would I do differently, because I know in a month and a half I actually get to do it again. And every store has its challenges, and but a lot of them are similar. And the store, the company that I work for, is very consistent with how they spin up each store. They use the same millwork guys. They use the same paint. Every store looks, you could close your eyes and not know what state you're in. So I'm now starting to build my systems that way, where, right down to like my network configurations. I'm building a network config, and I'm pushing it out to every store. I'm relying on folks like Rob Whiteside, who's, a specialist in that environment, where we're putting together, we're actually thinking through the process for each store. So, what would I tell myself? I would just tell myself, hey, in 6 weeks, you get another chance at this. And, what would you do differently each time? And just working on fine-tuning that process every single time. I work real closely with Mick on all my projects. We have great conversations about, what to do differently. And then, the best part about it is we can refer to other doors or other scenarios, and we'll be like, yeah, remember like that front door at the other place. And, like it's just like this catalog of experiences that you can pull from. And that to me has been the best part about this is, it's like I'm a big sports guy, right? So it's like I try my whole life kind of revolves around that athlete mentality. So it's like everything is kind of like that big game. And that's kind of how like the 43 years on earth has just mentally been for me, is like everything's a game. Everything's like that championship game. And I get to almost, relive that championship game every 6 or so weeks and really kind of think through how can I make sure we win this game. And that to me is how this has worked out, is I get a fresh start, you know, every month and a half.
That's cool, man. And that's
Yeah.
Like we're refining the process, right? Getting
Yeah.
better every time, fixing the mistakes.
Yeah.
getting
And
better.
and having my team, I mean, like, I'm a small company, just like you, Frankie, but like, having people like Mick around proximity wise, and having people like Mick and Rob that are just willing to jump on a plane and go work with me at different sites. I mean, it takes a village. I know it's a cliche, but like, I can only do so much. I know, like, this week I asked a question in our Slack group about phones. And they got into this thing where, and I know this is off topic, but it comes full circle. Like, I wanted some advice on how to lay out a phone system. And it was like, hey, you could do this and you could do that and you could do this. And then you could charge your customer for this. And I'm like, no, like, I don't want to sell phones. Like, and they're like, but it's easy. IT people do that now. And I'm like, I get it, man. But it's like, I'm not passionate about it. I don't know enough about it. And I don't want to be the person that gets a phone call when, hey, my phone line is scratchy and this and that. And like, I get it. It's like, okay, that only happens XYZ. This is why that would happen. But my whole thing is like, I don't want to do that, So you got to know your limits is my overall point here. And I know my limits. I know I'm decent at securing a door. I'm learning a lot. But when a door gets too complicated, you got to know when to fold them, and that's when I call someone like Mick in. I'm pretty good at networks, but securing a cannabis location, you got to make sure that your networks are spot on. And I'm fortunate enough where I can put together a price package that includes bringing in real experts. That to me is like the better days difference, knowing that I'm able to charge what I need to charge and to make sure that I'm putting my name on something, but I brought in these real experts that I can feel good about the end product.
Yeah. You're right about the network, man. With the Unify update, I had to call someone for that because I knew my limits, but at that point I was like, okay, especially with the doors too. If there's like interior vertical rods or something like that, I'm like, no.
You're done, right? Yeah.
That door off, you have to have, not have to, but you guys probably know better than me, some sawhorses or something to lay it down. There's so much more that goes into that has to be respected. And because I can cut strikes and do all that and the rim set and all that stuff, but it gets tricky, man. And I worked in the hospitals for years, and they had a maintenance crew.
Yeah.
Maintain and do everything. And like I said, the bigger systems are where I feel comfortable because you have more experts. You should have more experts to hand off responsibility.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, guys, I got another one for you. Biggest challenge you faced during doing security in that industry?
I'd say the biggest challenge is just really respecting the responsibility that you've been given, if that makes any sense. It's the challenge is it's almost at you, like, this is a very serious building that you're securing, and you got to be like your game has got to be on 100% of the time. I know I touched on it earlier, so I'll come back to it. For me, like I said, each state is a pitching wedge away in New England, but they all carry a whole different set of rules and regulations. So, and the company that I work for is experiencing humongous growth in the New England area. We're starting to they have stores and stuff outside of New England, and we're starting to work on those as well. But the challenge is being hand in hand with him as he moves into another state. We just moved into Connecticut last week. The last two projects. One was a growing facility in Connecticut. One was a retail facility in Connecticut. We learned all sorts of different regulations that, I mean, Mick was along for the ride. Some of them were just stupid. I mean, let's be real. Like, there was just no reason. And that's kind of the thing, is like, it's new to them too. You almost have to respect it a little bit. Like, some of their requests sound outrageous, and then you just got to remember they're new at it too. Like they think it's a good idea, and I don't begrudge them for it. We're all kind of learning this together. As someone who's becoming a serious player in this game, some of this stuff just seems ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I get it. It's just the way it is, and I'm lucky enough that I work for a company that doesn't bat an eye at those types of things. Like, for example, last month we had one fisheye in a safe that was like the size of a shoebox. Yeah, I guess you're right, Mick. Technically, there was two.
Two fish eyes.
But so there was, but the actual square part of the safe had one fisheye. Should have covered the whole thing. And then a regulator comes in. I need to be able to see this. I need to be able to see that. We turn this fisheye into pan tilt zoom, electronic pan tilt zoom, and it was capturing every square centimeter of the safe. And they still wanted two more cameras that kind of did this at the same time. Is it foolish? Yeah, man, it's foolish as hell. But I'm fortunate enough that I work for a company that's like, man, well, we got to do it. Charge me T&M for it. Let's just get it done. And but again, that's a challenge. Just never knowing what to expect from a regulator is, for me, the biggest challenge, because, like I said, the states over here are pitching wedge away from each other, and you're, on any given day, I could go through 3 states. It happens to me very frequently, where I'm Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut are, I could go to all 3 facilities in one day. It's not uncommon for me to do that, and I got to remember 3 different sets of rules and regs.
Yeah. I think that was the biggest thing that I was afraid of too, was the rules and regulations, because if you're doing it the first time, you don't want to look like you're doing it for the first time. Even if you have the confidence you could pull it off, you want the list of what do you guys need. And lucky for me, that wasn't their first time that they built one. So they had someone there that knew, okay, this is what the state inspector is going to want. And after we ran through that, my shoulders relaxed, and I was like, okay, I drew up the drawing. They're like, we're going to add this one here. We're going to move this camera there. And yeah, you're right. All the entries, everything had to be covered, the exterior of the building. And, you're adding in your own experience and ideas, but sometimes they don't make sense there. And you'll have the hallway completely covered, but they want 2 or 3 going down the hall just to see up close as well, in case it falls off of a pallet or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, last project we have glass breaks in an exterior vestibule that are, like, what do you say, Mick, 14 feet away from a pretty major road.
Yeah.
And first night, the very first night, the next morning, glass break, 6 a.m. I mean, it was, you look at the cameras, there was a little car accident right outside the facility. You know, it's like, and it's like that glass break's going to go off constantly. That was something that the regulator, you know, looked at the plans. And that's the other thing. A lot of times they look at plans and they're not there. They don't see what's going on, you know? So they're like, oh, glass vestibule, load that bad boy up with glass breaks. And then you're like, well, you know, let's kind of think this through because it's 14 feet away from a road and, you know, but they want it. So you got to put it in and then, you know, get approved and make a suggestion afterwards to remove a battery or two here or there. But, you know.
And I think that's a good point because, you know, you said it's not just the rules, it's the people applying the rules too, right? And you're new at it, they're new at it. Excuse me. But that's the learning curve, right? You know, they'll get better at it at some point. You'll get better at it.
Yeah, we're all humans.
Got to be patient.
Yeah. And like it took me a while to realize that they are just making recommendations based on a set of paper. You know, they're not actually there. I'd like to hope that if they stood there and saw that the glass vestibule was, you know, 14 feet away from a major road, we wouldn't be putting a glass break outside, you know, but hey, look, it is what it is. We're all learning as we go, and they're no different than us. They're new at it too. You know, that's the thing that I sometimes think about in this cannabis industry is like, how did they get into it? You know, like we're asking ourselves that question tonight. You know, how did we get into securing it? But how did they work through the process of like state regulators and that'd be a great thing to ask one of these dudes someday if they're not being a total jerk and want to actually talk to someone like us. But how did they get there? You know, were you in like, I don't know, like what did you regulate before this? You know, I'd be curious to know that.
That's interesting.
That's a good question. I think you're going to get a lot of people who would just, you know, probably have worked in some other inspection type building inspector, something like that,
like food or something, maybe. Like
somebody who can read through some regulations and know how to interpret it. I mean, that's kind of skill set. But you know what? Maybe we should try to get one on the show.
Yeah. Okay.
See if they'd be kind enough to join us.
Yeah. I'll next guy I talk to, I'll see. Man, the last one we did, they showed up six deep. 6 inspectors came, all suits and ties. And I was
ready to go.
Yeah, I was like, I haven't wore a tie since Obama was in office.
I got some good advice from someone. He's like, you want to mess something up, obvious, so you can fix it when they tell you to. Because if you don't, they're gonna find something else. Have to fix.
And that's what my guy said too. He's like, you know, purposefully leave a couple of cameras like out of whack, you know, because they're never gonna just be like, oh, you're perfect. Let's get lunch, you know, like they all want to find something, you know. That's what they're there for. They're gonna find something. So give them something easy to find, and you know.
I like when they're like people motivated first. You know, to keep everyone safe, because, man, you can't imagine if someone really did go in there, because the effort that it would take to get in there, it's probably not going to be nice after that. So
it all depends.
Your best, you know.
It all depends. I mean, we were talking earlier about like how I was asked to come in. It was a competitor, actually. That's the one thing I'm noticing about this industry too, is they're all very tight with each other. Even the competitors still have this common thread. It feels like this industry is definitely, you know, got that synergy to it. So we had a place in Rhode Island that got broken into, and they took them bad. And you know, so our guy reached out and was like, "Hey, you know, Better Days has really made sure that our buildings are set up for optimal success. And they called us in to go give them our opinion as to what happened. And we're talking bottom of the barrel camera system. I don't think we want to get into the brand or anything here, but when you talk about how secure these buildings are, these guys cut a hole right in the side of a corrugated metal sided building and got right in. It's definitely an inside job. They knew where to cut a hole in the building and where there was going to be a void in the wall. But it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Working for a company that's not afraid to spend a few bucks to secure their building is really a joy, because when I was asked to look at what was going on over there, they just got taken for $500,000 probably, and I was like, yeah, man, if you put a couple of motion sensors in this void, and like, yeah, but I would need like 12 of those. I'm like, yeah, it's like $1,200. It's
Exactly. Yeah.
You're talking to me about how the plants you have right now have serious soil contamination because of they were exposed to the elements. I don't know, $1,200 doesn't sound that bad right now, but
Yeah, it's hard. I think that was one of the most difficult things when I started doing the industry at all, security and whatnot, selling, is to not scare the heck out of them. But
yeah.
if you've been around, you've seen a lot of bad stuff, and you're like, yeah, $1,200 because you've seen the damage that can be done.
Right.
You're like, do I want to be fear tactic motivated when I talk to these people?
Yeah.
But most people are pretty savvy. They know what they have. They want to protect it.
Yeah.
I think the invention of a lock was by the rich people to show off that they had stuff to secure before it was even like, oh, I should get something to secure this stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they do like spending money, big TVs and everything, and showing off their nice system. Those are the fun ones.
Yeah, it's always about finding that right customer, right? And it doesn't matter how big the business is or how much the business makes, right? The right customer is always the right customer because he wants the right solution, right?
Yeah.
And he wants it at the right price. Like you said, if you want to go ahead and get Best Buy cameras and throw them up on your your building where you might have $500,000 worth of inventory in there, well, the egg is on your face if it gets broken into, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference between really good security and bargain basement security, and you really have to understand that this is what you're going to get. You're not every security company is created equal, and some of them, like you said, whoever this guy used left holes, right? And that's what we do as professionals is we try to anticipate those holes, fill those holes, right? There should be no way to beat it. Now, obviously, there's always a way to beat it, because I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as impossible.
Yep.
There's only difficult.
Yep.
And the best we can do is make it so difficult that they give up or don't even try.
Yeah.
That's your goal. As a security professional, if you tell me I make things that are impossible to get into, I'm going to say you haven't been doing this long enough.
No.
Right?
No.
Make it hard. Make it super hard. And then that way you deter it. You deter it, and at the least you can, if they tried it, you can catch them, right? Alert the authorities, get the cops over there, and minimize the damage, right? Yeah, anybody can smash a window, grab something, and run. Can't really stop that. I mean, all the years we've been doing this, if somebody smashed a window, grabbed something, and took off, what are the chances? Probably zero.
Yeah.
But to go in there and to clean out the whole place takes time.
Yep.
That's where we come in. We build barriers. We take more time. We stop them. We lock doors correctly, put motion sensors. Like, that's what we do. So, it's all of that culmination. And my experience in the industry is just with you, Jeff, is working side by side with you, going into these places. I'm learning through his experience. He's telling me, hey, we need a man trap. We need, dual alarm systems. We need this, we need that. And I'm just the same thing. I'm thinking in my brain, wow, that's a lot. But that's what it calls for because there is something valuable in there. Like I
Yeah.
think of it kind of like a bank, right?
Yeah.
Similar, similar. I mean, they probably have just as much valuables in there.
Yeah, and they're secured pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the equipment that's used, the technologies that are used, it's very much on par with a bank.
Yeah. So last one, guys. What advice would you give someone who wants to get into this market?
I would say be prepared to learn. Uh, be prepared to, like Frankie said, to be the Lone Ranger. There isn't a lot of um, guidance. There aren't going to be a lot of people that can. I mean, aside from just like, security experts, sure. I mean, you can find people, but for me, I guess that would be my advice is that, you're blazing a path, and be ready to kind of, be the Lone Ranger. To go back to what Frankie said, it's a perfect example. Now, I say that, and then in the same sentence, I'm going to say, I have people that I've referred to through this whole podcast. So I certainly don't feel alone, but I do know that it's not like there's 20 years of, infrastructure I can go back and look at and say, how did people do this at the beginning? We are the people who are doing this at the beginning. We are the, without patting ourselves on the back, we're almost like the forefathers of this industry. Like this whole cannabis, securing a cannabis location. It's not how did our fathers or grandfathers do this. That doesn't exist, So, because I will say, with every other hurdle in my career, I've been able to find somebody or find a reference point to how this was done and try to replicate that and work with somebody who has done this. So, biggest challenge is you're constantly learning, and like I said earlier, I get to learn and do it again every 6 months, 6 weeks. That to me is the coolest part, because like I think back to some of the stuff that I've done, like say for example, like audio stuff or home cinemas and stuff like that. We don't do a ton of those, and I get to think back, man, if I could have done that, if I do that again, here's what I would do differently. And then I might not get one of those calls for like 8 months, But in this, it's like, oh man, what would I do differently? And then I get to execute what I would have done differently in, a very short period of time. So I'm very fortunate to have that. I have an amazing client that is just growing out of control. So it's awesome to grow with him and to really execute a change every time.
When you said forefathers, I got like a mental image of Jeff Day and Frankie on like a Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I got. Frankie's a little easier to chisel out of a stone than I am. He's got that. He looks good,
Yeah.
I would say my advice is get Jeff's number. You can just call him. He's going to put his number on here for you. So, but
hey, I talking shit. I mean, yeah, I have no ego in this game. Like I help people all the time. Like that's a one thing. When I got into access control, no one around here was going to help me. And I'm 43 years old. I went to college. I learned a lot of the things I needed to learn for my career in college. And then I got to branch out and, I focused on network administration in college, and then you go and you get a job. When I was in college, there wasn't access control 101. That was very new. So it's not like I had anywhere to learn this in a formal setting. And then as access control became big at the beginning of my career, no one was going to take me under their wing. I would be a threat to them, so I will say, that has been a challenge, is to learn about this from a not from a from a setting that I'm not accustomed to. I'm still very much of that age where you went to a class and then you took the skills from your class and then you used them in real life. Today's generation doesn't learn that way, and I'm at least aware of that, but I'm in this weird age where I don't really get to play in that sandbox, So I had to learn access control on my own because it was a passion of mine, and then got to meet up with a lot of great friends that were mentors. But that to me has been a challenge. Is there was no formal education process.
What was the question? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I tried.
Hold on, I got
I
you.
wrote it down. I was like,
I got you. What advice would you give someone who wants to get into this market?
Okay, that's right. Jeff did a great job. It wasn't, but getting into the access stuff with the mentorship and stuff, I'll tell guys like, dude, it's not like you're gonna be working for a guild and you're a blacksmith and you're gonna be 12 years old living with the master.
Right.
That's how it used to be. So you're going to have to get a mosaic from good techs that are around you and people that'll give you a little information. But yeah, the threat thing is like so real in the culture of being the technician that they're comfortable where they're at being the god of the company. And then they see you just climbing up and they're like, not going to happen, and it sucks, man. You're begging for little scraps of information and stuff, but as far as getting into this market, just you got to know how to read the drawings for one, because if you can read drawings pretty well, when I was reading the CO2, for instance, the life safety stuff, that was probably the smallest portion of the project as far as money. So, but the responsibility, I'm like, you can't smell this. You can drop dead if it's like at 30,000 parts per million. 5,000 is when the alarm goes off. So I talked to a guy and he did the drawings for us. And he's like, Frank, you've done FM 200 and Halon, fire alarm, no sweat. So when I was reading that, I was like, okay, the device is 12 inches AFF. And I'm showing the guys, I'm like, this is above finished floor. Said this stuff you got to be real strict on. And just being able to read that confidently, and I wasn't leaving anyone hanging in the wind. That was like the toughest part. But being able to read that, I mean, all the other drawings, it was easy after that. Just asking the same questions you would ask the inspector. What do you guys want? And I've heard you say that, Mick, before when you talk to the client, and that was pretty ballsy, man, when you're like, is this what you wanted after the install? I was like, damn, that's a crazy question, because they might say no. And I don't know what to do after that part. But
that's my man, the gambler.
That's crazy, man.
Roll them.
Yeah, always rolling them dice.
But you got to know that. I mean, you want to know that, right? Because if you missed, tell me where I missed.
Yeah.
And if you know you're not going to let them down too, you're like,
that's it.
I'm going to come back, and you're not going to leave upset with
me.
Maybe not for that, at least, because you're not going to let them down there.
That's a confident man's question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that one stuck out. I think that was like the first thing I heard him say. I was like, but yeah, that would be the main thing. Just, and I got lucky because I got 2 years at several different companies. Hey, you want to do HVAC? Do you want to do fire alarm? Do you want to do access control? cameras, and I just got this mosaic of guys that they had been doing it like you guys, steady for a big bank of time. So they knew the mistakes I was going to make before I made them, and they'd be like, no, don't do that, And I just took that. That kind of came in perfect when they wanted all the different systems to work together and come online at the same time too.
I think for me, like I said, working in private education, and really having a lot of security and surveillance hardware and software that I was responsible for, while I never installed it, I was responsible for maintaining it and using it. So I think, I'm really fortunate that I had that to at least the experience to roll back on. I never really thought about that until right now, this podcast. So, but I probably don't give that enough credit, where I was able, or I don't think about that enough. That I spent a lot of time using hardware that people like Mick installed for me, and then at some point I went off on my own, and now somehow I was installing that stuff, which is a trip to think about. But yeah, I spent a long time, using, being the end user of all of these things, and working on designing it with folks like Mick. And now here I am being a person like Mick. So it's, yeah, I never really kind of put that together until tonight. That's cool to think about. Because I was able to definitely have that. Again, it just comes down to that comfort. Confidence and comfort are really two things in our industry that are really important. So, but I mean, and I know you said, joking around, get Jeff's number. I don't. We're not on Earth long enough to hold information. If you want to. And I guess that's probably the education background in me, just full tilt, is that I don't really, I don't, there's nothing worth holding on to, for me. Like anything I know is available to anybody who wants to listen to me. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just a guy who's had a lot of life experience, and, I'm happy to share it, and, hopefully it helps somebody out and gets to a place where they're able to, like you, Frankie, watching your stories and being like, oh, okay, like I'm with it because of listening to Frankie, So it's kind of, I try to be like that, where, just giving people that comfort and confidence. But, it's a dangerous place, right? You don't want to jump into and again, it comes full circle with what we're doing, what we're securing. You don't want any Mo, Dick, and Harry doing this. That's the other part. So it's a delicate dance, for sure.
Yeah,
it's like you don't want to be doing car stereos one week and then cannabis,
something like that. Something like that. I heard there's places around here doing this.
Oh, that was an inside joke. Okay,
that was.
Well, with when you guys are going into detail, Mick was saying, we're professionals going through this. The professionals keep the other professional, like criminals, out, because they're going to go, there's easier places than that place. Because everything. And when I hear you guys' conversations talking about the door closures and everything, like, that is key, man. That stuff sticks out to me, because if that door doesn't close, you might as well not even have a reader on it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense at all. And
waste of money.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Mick and I have talked about this before. I mean, as I learn about the different pieces of hardware, like an Adams right is almost like the most secure way to make sure a door is locked. Like that lever goes into the frame.
Oh, the flip bolt.
The flip bolt, yeah, an Adams right flip bolt. But man, like, it's not a friend of access control. So it's almost like it's the most secure door possible, but it's not electronic at all. So then you're almost like, we took out a couple months ago, Mick, you and I, we took out two and made it an electronic door. But we really, I mean, in some ways it's kind of like, again, that delicate dance of convenience over security.
Yeah.
And you just have to decide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one thing I want to say too is the communication between the different trades, because you're doing access control on a exterior door. That's going to be like with the storefront, the glass company. You got to be able to get with them, and
Yeah.
if you're lucky enough, if it's a new build, you can get your wires in there. But then if you're talking to the door hardware guys, that's interior, that's a completely different company usually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then you want to know about the floor guys, because we're trying to do all those different systems, and then the floor guys, they would come in and they'd just wreck our whole week or month and everything. And but if you're stay cool with them too and not be all arrogant on there, I see a lot of people just wreck themselves.
How
Thinking,
how so? How did the floor guys kink you up?
well, they had to come in and shave down the concrete and polish everything, and we were doing the sensors that hang down the CO2 sensors and the moisture
Got it.
sensors, and then the irrigation on the back wall. So you put the irrigation with the grow link. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the grow link.
Yeah.
So they got the sensor, the moisture sensors with the prongs that go into the plants as well.
Yeah.
I recommend hardwiring those. The Wi-Fi is no go.
So
I'd be open ears from you guys about that actually.
so the floor guys jammed you up because of like dust control?
No, they just wouldn't let us in to
Oh,
install
oh,
and
yeah.
then all that.
Yeah.
But
That goes back to the construction 101, right?
right,
It's like these other trades can come in and they can ruin your day, or you can be nice with them.
yeah,
Yeah.
Because I think that goes through everything, right? I mean, every trade has the ability to wreck your day.
Oh, yeah.
You know, painters come in early. You know, electricians kick you out of a room or not turn your power on.
Yeah, and so do we. I mean, we have the ability to ruin some. I mean, today alone, I had to install a phone line somewhere for the elevator guy, and he was all pissed off at me that, you know, I mean, I got there at 8:15. That's when Jeff Day gets there, you know, like I ain't no 7 o'clock guy, you know. So he was all, and I found out that I needed to do this at 3:15 the day before, and I didn't have the hardware I needed on site. I needed to get a little 66 punch down. It's like I'd like rummage through at the shop to find one, and you know, I got there at 8:15. You know, that's when I got there. And he's like, "Ugh." And I'm like, hey man, you know, it'll be done. And, you know, so you know, the joke here is we can ruin people's days too, you know. So it's just a human network, man. We're all working with each other, and we're so focused on how people burn us all day long and hold us up, but we do the same thing, you know.
I don't get too hung up on it. Even when I was working for other companies, I'm like,
We can't.
I'll just go in and meet the GC, no matter if I was pulling cable or whatever. I'm like, I need to know that guy by name, and he needs to know my name, and it made things run a whole lot smoother. Because I'm like, Clint, we're trying to get this done, you know. And it just let him in there, you know, and you just get these free passes, and then when he needs something, you're there for him too.
Right.
And it just
no, you're so right. Yeah, it is. Every job site is like this little ecosystem, and like, you know, the currency of the ecosystem is so funny to watch. And you know, like I have a great cable tech who you know, he'll be on sites for a couple weeks before I even get there. And before I know it, he knows this guy's daughter's name, and you know what this guy likes to do and what soccer team he likes and everything. And it, you know, I mean, you know, there's cultural things, like, you know, I'll walk in and they'll start rattling off. I'm like, you know, I failed Spanish in high school, but I know what you're saying right now, you know. So it's funny, but it is job site. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You gotta. It is. It's like it's just like a little high school, you know. Like there's the people you got to be nice to, and the it's it is. It's fun. It's not for. It's hard. People don't. It's hard to explain to people who aren't in it.
It's a soft skill too. Like I tell you, I was on this one site in DC, and the GC needed a computer cable run. He needed an Ethernet cable for his stuff.
Yeah.
Like 30 feet of cable.
Yep.
We didn't charge him for it. Just, hey, we got that. We got you.
Yeah.
I tell you what, that little bit of goodwill coasted us through for the rest of the summer. He had our backs.
Yeah.
He was telling people to get out. We need to work. Like
nice. Yeah.
The whole time. And that was just one small gesture.
Yeah.
One small gesture. Yeah. All it took.
Yeah. And the price of a cup of coffee, probably. You know, yeah, it was nothing. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you let people borrow tools on the site. You know, they're in a total jam. You know, you're like, oh, I got one of those in the truck. You know, like it is. It's like I said, the currency of a job site is funny to watch.
Goodwill. That's it. Start spreading some goodwill, and doors start open. Literally.
Yeah. Because you're right, Frankie. We need it. I mean, we need all the help we can get. The love is a battlefield, you know, and we're on one every day, you know, and it's like, you know, it's just you just want to get home to your kids, you know. That's really all it comes down to. So it's like you're just there, you know, just trying to get home. So it's all about playing nice with people who can ruin your day if you don't do it the right way.
What's cool seeing them on the next projects too. You know,
yeah,
dude, you were on this project.
Yup. Yeah.
It's like, oh, and then you just click, man. What were we gonna say?
No,
huh?
No, I want to touch on that first. Like, yeah, because like that is the thing. Like, I am the cannabis company that I work for. I am his exclusive security and surveillance guy, but that's his model. Like, he wants the same millwork guys, the same electricians, the same HVAC. So absolutely right. You got to work with these guys because you're probably going to see them at another job somewhere else. So, or even not this cannabis guy, you bump into another guy from another job site, and yeah, it just pays dividends. Like that, you treat someone good, and vice versa. You're right. It's cool. That's always cool when you bump into some rando guy that you saw like 3 years ago, and you see me and like, oh man, how's he? Oh, he's in jail. You know,
I was gonna withhold this. But since you said that, so there's this guy with the forklift, and I needed this 500-pound tank for FM 200 in the basement.
Yep.
And he's all, just give me a 12-pack of beer, and he went and, he put it down in the basement for me. I was like, oh my God, thank God.
The currency of a job site. I say it all the time.
Well, I seen him like 3 years later. I was like, hey, I got you that case of beer. I was like, how's everything been? He's like, well, I'm in AA right now. No, dude. I was like, I'm sorry about that.
All because of Frankie.
Frankie got the good stuff. Man. Nah, you can't beat yourself up. But that's funny, though.
It was funny, man. For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge. So what we've been doing with these is, in a couple weeks, we'll schedule like an IG live, and whoever has watched the podcast can tune into that and ask questions and get some live feedback. And if you're up for that, I'd love to have you back on that IG live.
Very cool, man.
And if you're listening, TEKnowledge Worldwide, TEKnowledgewww. That's where all of us. I think all three of us are members of that community. We share information in Slack. We hit each other up. We ask questions. We show stuff. It's just a great way to exchange information. And like these guys have been saying for the last hour, learning new stuff, sharing, knowledge. It's all what we do and what we're all about. So I'm going to just end this off. You can find me on Instagram at TriCanSecurity. Frankie, where can they find you?
almost every day at Instagram, and that's going to be at Cicada Systems AZ.
Awesome. How about you, Jeff?
And I'm at only on Instagram at Better Days Tech. More of a Instagram reader than I am an Instagram poster. I try to. I like Frankie. Frankie, when was the last time you actually did a straight up post? I mean, that's got to be.
Nah, he's stories only.
Yeah, he's stories only. You know.
I like that they disappear because I'm like,
yeah.
they'll probably pay attention.
I know, but man, some of your stuff is sad that it disappears. I mean, you
I was just telling him this. I was like, man, I missed some stories, and now like I wanted them.
Or I hate when Frankie's stuff hits and it's like in the middle of a story and like he starts rattling off. It's like you missed like 18 hours worth, and you can tell he's into something hot, and it's like, God damn, I missed the whole beginning. I missed it. And I was like, damn, that is like, how do you can I buy a few? How do I go back in time? But
yeah, right.
But no, at the same time, it's like that's Frankie's flavor, and I really like it. It's just you can't cry over spilled milk. I missed it. I got only myself to blame. Right, you're not there for Frankie when he opens. You missed it.
Yeah, man. I found a TV guide, man, and I was like, oh, I remember this, man, because if you missed it, it was gone.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Yeah. Frankie's a no DVR guy.
No DVR.
Nah, hey, anyone who's listening, you got to get on Frankie. Join, follow him, and just know he's stories only. So, curl up with your favorite blanket and listen up. That's the best advice I can give you. Is like
at least once a day.
Yep.
Yeah. So you don't miss it.
Yep.
I try to have a theme of something that pops up, and I was telling Preston this. He's like, why do you talk about certain things certain times? I'm like, I kind of have like 20 topics loaded, and then when something hits that day, I just go into it because I don't want to just ramble off of memories of certain things. But yeah, so
it's hot fire.
Really talked about it, huh?
It's hot, and no one else, like, I don't follow anyone else who does it, so I'm way into it. I mean, unfortunately, the downside to that is if I miss it, I miss it, so I know I'm missing some nuggets that I can't pick up, but at the same time, it's like I know that's Frankie's flow. I love it. It's cool.
Next week should be pretty good with the project we're on. And you guys know I never really state where I am because I want to protect the client, and I don't want to show what equipment they have. So that's really the only thing where I won't say where I am. I won't have any of their signs or anything in the picture or whatnot. But
I get it.
Well,
Makes
thank
sense.
you guys.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you all for making this a great one.
All right, man. Thanks for having us.
All right.